So the Reserve Bank have come out with some tough new rules around lending for banks when it comes to investment. Governor Graham Wheeler has come out today indicating that investments or investors are going to need a 40% deposit to purchase houses. It's called the loan to value ratio, or the LVR, and we'll have a look exactly what it includes according to the statement released by the Reserve Bank. The proposed changes include at least 95% of bank lending to residential property investors across New Zealand require a deposit of more than 40%. Now investors in Auckland are only charged a 30% deposit, so they don't have to have a 30% deposit. And also it says at least 90% of lending to owner-occupiers require a deposit of more than 20%. So at the moment, and these are rules that came in 2013, if you're an investor in Auckland, you need a 30% deposit. If you're an investor around the rest of the country, you need a 20% deposit, but the Reserve Bank is saying everybody gets 40%.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose property investors, generally one imagines them as being people with probably access to more cash than new home buyers or others, so how much the 40% will affect them, I guess, is a question that we'll possibly find out in the next year or so. And yeah, the other thing with international people from overseas, one would imagine they probably also have access to a 40% deposit for the sort of New Zealand house. So I mean, I certainly hope it makes a difference.
On that point, the Property Institute Chief Executive, his name is Ashley Church. So the exact point, David, he says this: most investors, particularly in the Auckland market, who have been involved in the market for any period of time during this boom, will already be sitting on, or approaching, I should say, 40% equity anyway. So it's not going to have the drop-dead effect that the Reserve Bank might have expected it to. If anything, it's going to have a slight speed bump. So he's basically saying the LVR changes to 40% will barely make a difference. And I think it could be bigger than that, because I think about it from a Dunedin perspective. Okay, so in Dunedin right now, the average house price is $300,000. That's the average. In Auckland, as we know, it's just under $1 million, and then there's gradients as we come through the country. So if you don't have a 40% house price deposit in Auckland of $400,000, but you've got one of $120,000, where are you going to buy your investment property? You're going to buy it in Dunedin.
Yeah.
So if they spread this across the board, which is what they're talking about, I actually think the conversations we've been having over the past few weeks about outside investors coming into Dunedin, spending more money on properties, property prices going up, I think that will increase, because all those people who don't have $400K to buy a house in Auckland as an investor, or let's say 300 in Hamilton and Wellington, or 280 in, they'll come to Dunedin and they'll spend their 120 and they'll buy investment properties.
I suppose one hopes that the government will keep an eye, and the Reserve Bank will keep an eye on sort of what happens and adjust their policy as it sort of goes without mucking around too much. It's interesting that the Prime Minister's now frustrated about the slow response to the whole thing, when it seemed a little while ago that there was no sort of housing crisis in New Zealand, but he seems to have maybe a little late got on board with that, so that's something, I suppose.